Join us today on Beyond the Lair, where we have a conversation with Teara Fraser, the first Indigenous woman to launch an airline in Canada. Teara shares her story about an unstoppable will to succeed at every level and push the limits of even her own expectations. Hello, everybody. My name is Gina Jackson Montgomery, and welcome to Beyond the Lair.
And I'm Dean Montgomery.
We are so thrilled today to have one of my favorite guests and people of all time, Teara Fraser. Teara is a groundbreaking Indigenous aviation leader and entrepreneur who made history as the first Indigenous woman to launch an airline in Canada called Iskwew Airlines. She discovered her passion for flying at the age of 30 during a trip to Africa. As the founder and CEO of Iskwew Air, she focuses on serving remote Indigenous communities across British Columbia and neighboring provinces. Her innovative approach combines traditional Indigenous values with modern aviation, championing zero-emission flights and creating opportunities for Indigenous youth and women. Welcome to our program, Teara.
Thank you. It's just an honor and a thrill to be here.
We know each other from... number one, we met during the Bearsler season 1, which was filmed in this studio. MasterCard was generous enough to say, who is the most amazing Indigenous person that you know that could take place and represent us in a seat as a guest judge? And you're the first person that I thought of because I just think you're so incredible as a woman and a human being and everything that you've gone through and that you are right now. But what we would like, and we ask every guest this, we know who you are today, and we're going to hear all about how you got there. But let's review back to the past a little bit and talk about your upbringing and where you grew up, because I think it's really interesting to tell people where we started to where we get.
Yeah, it's a long journey to get to where I am now.
Start from the beginning.
Lots has happened. But I appreciate that because it is important for us to share a little bit of who we are and also share parts of ourselves that maybe people don't know about or have been able to witness or see. So I was born in Hay River, Northwest Territories, and my parents met in the Lower Mainland. My mom was raised in Vancouver, in Burnaby, actually. And my mom and dad met and fell in love. She went all the way up to the Northwest Territories with him. My Métis background is on my dad's side. And tragically, my dad passed away when I was 3 and just a little older than 3. And so really, and I've actually grieved that loss my whole life. It's hard to imagine grieving something that, like, I didn't know him. I was 3.5 years old, but you grieve the losses. You grieve, when you get married and you grieve that relationship and you witness other people have that relationship. And, that was also part of the, disconnection from my Métis heritage when I was younger. And so my mom, after a while, made her way down. We lived in Dawson Creek. We lived in Prince George. And finally, she made her way back to the Lower Mainland and then back up north to Quesnel, and where she built a log house that we actually built together, like as a wow. child, peeling the logs. And we built this beautiful a fireplace out of river rocks. And I grew up a whole bunch of my years in Quesnel.
That's incredible that you did that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What was it like growing up in a small town like that? And what inspired you to be interested? As a child, were you interested in aviation? Were you just a normal kid trying to figure out what you liked? What was it that really led to a passion project of wanting to fly?
So when I was growing up, I didn't know anybody in aviation. I didn't know a pilot, an engineer, a flight attendant. I didn't know anybody that worked at the airport. I had no touch with aviation. And certainly, you see on the TV, we lived 10 miles out of town. So, we had one channel on the TV, but still you would see, aircraft. I mean, that never even was something that would ever even cross my mind as something that would be possible. And so, no, I think a lot of times pilots do dream of it from the time that they're, young children. But for me, it never really crossed my mind. And if it had crossed my mind, I don't know if I would have been able to make the connection between it crossing my mind and something that would have been possible for someone like me.
So when was the first time it crossed your mind?
Mhm.
When you thought you'd be flying or interested, or I remember the first time I flew and I was terrified. And I think I was terrified until I was about 16 or 18, and
Mhm.
and it was still uncomfortable into my 30s, and I was flying every day. Now whatever, but yeah.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember for sure if there was a flight in my childhood or even in my young adulthood, but I certainly don't remember one.
Mm-hmm.
What I do remember is, the first time being in a small plane in Africa. I went on a trip. Some people I think I was, flying there as a career. No, I was a single mom with 2 kids and with very limited education, very limited access to any resources. Certainly, I guess depends how you define poverty, but certainly not living with a lot of means. But I worked really, really hard to save. I'd never really been anywhere in my life, and I worked really hard to save to go on this trip to Africa. And it took me a couple of years, and it was really, it's an important part of my story, this part, because saving for that trip, like going to somewhere like Africa just seemed like this wild, impossible, big dream that was just not going to be possible. And I was determined. I was in a low point and I sat on the floor of a Chapters bookstore and looked up in the self-help section, and some book there said, write a bucket list. And I just happened to put on the bucket list, because I love all the creatures and the trees, right? As I wanted to be able to see the zebras and the lions and the giraffes. And so it just happened to be, I wrote on this bucket list that I wanted to go to Africa. And it's like when I made that decision, I said, no, I'm going to Africa. And it was just like I locked on to that mission, and I saved and I saved and I saved. And when I flew in to Africa, because I actually made that thing that seemed impossible, because it truly did. Going on a trip like that seemed impossible. And when I flew into Africa and I made that thing possible, it unlocked something for me around possibility. And it's an important part of the story because in the travels, I went on an aerial tour over the Okavango Delta in Botswana. And it's still so vivid for me. The pilot was banking the aircraft and telling us stories of the land. And you never really witness the land in the same way as you do flying, like a bird does. And you see the stories and you see the water and you see the trees and you experience those stories. And I came down from that first flight in a small aircraft that I had ever taken. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want that guy's job. Like, that is the coolest thing that I've ever been part of. And so I came down from that flight and the adrenaline is still pumping, and I still have this idea that I'm going to be a pilot, and then comes in, okay, sweetie, honey, like, let's get real. You're a single mom with 2 kids. You're 30 years old. You have no access to resources. It's just post 9/11. Like, there's no way that something like that is possible for you. And then just 2 weeks later, I went skydiving, and another pivotal moment as we taxied out. And I wanted to touch everything. I wanted to touch all the buttons. I wanted to know how everything worked and what everything meant. And I'll never forget that moment, taxiing out, where I said, I don't care what it takes to make this happen. I'm going to fly airplanes.
Amazing.
Wow. And then what? Do
Mhm.
tell.
I
And
know.
then?
So what did you do?
Yes.
What did you do? Did you go
We're
steal a plane?
So I came home to Canada, and as mentioned, no access to resources, but I was doggedly determined. So I started my flight training, and within 1 year, I had a commercial pilot's license in hand
Holy.
and made that thing possible too. And it's like every time you make something possible that seems impossible happen, it like opens the door further to what else
So
might be
how did you get
possible.
your hours in? What was it? Did you have to do that, or how did that work?
Yeah, there's a whole process and
Yeah.
set of, requirements. You go through a number of steps. Everything in becoming a pilot has both a technical written portion and a practical
Mhm.
flight examination portion. So you go through your private, in my case, because some people do it in a little bit different order. In my case, your first solo, which is unforgettable.
Mhm.
Your private pilot's license, learning how to fly a multi-engine aircraft, learning how to fly IFR. So IFR is instrument flight rules, which means that you can't necessarily see the ground. You're basically flying in
Mhm.
airways in the sky. And your commercial license, for me, I got my instructor rating.
But you did your commercial license in 1 year.
Yes.
Okay.
That's nuts
Yeah.
because I know that my brother, who you know as well, Shane Jackson,
I do.
got his commercial license at Fraser Valley
College. It's now a
College.
university.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was going to say university. I think it was college back then.
It was.
But I believe it was a 2-year program.
Yeah, it's I was 30 years old, right? And so now that seems so young.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But, at the time, it seemed like I was just determined. I was determined. I set myself a goal, and that was my goal, was a year. And so I, did everything in my power to do that. But I didn't do it alone. So many people helped. So many people helped with my children. So many people, I wouldn't have even got started if my friend Cheryl, because I had nowhere to even borrow money from. And my friend Cheryl said, well, I've got a credit card that, has a decent sized balance. It has nothing on it. As long as you make the minimum payments, if you want to use that to, to get yourself going.
Nice.
Yeah. So, as much as for me, yes, I was determined, and yes, I was, created a dream for myself. None of that is possible without all the people that gave a helping hand along the way.
100%. We always say that.
Yeah.
I always think
No one does it alone.
No,
No.
and bootstrapping on your own. I mean, there's so many resources now. We are the same age. Well, you're a year younger. Yeah, I know. I'm a junior elder this year. Yay.
Watch yourself.
I know. But what do you think drove your determination when you grew up? And I know that we've talked to many of our guests about their upbringing and facing adversity, and something in their life has triggered them to, whether it's based on anger, whether it's based on trauma, whether it's based on I'll show you, or maybe they just inherently get it from somebody in their family that's just that they bear witness to a matriarch or somebody that's very determined. What do you think your muse is for all of your determination?
I think there's two things that contributed to that, determined, because it wasn't always there, right? It was like something unlocked for me. But there's a couple of things. I think certainly when you face adversity, and like even still, I can make, like when it comes to dinner, I can make something out of literal nothing. And we joke about it sometimes. I can look in the cupboard and be like, okay, I can actually make something edible out of nothing. So when you face adversity, you learn to be resilient. You learn to be tough. You learn to be all those things. I don't think we should have to learn. I don't want to martyrize that, need to be resilient or that need to be strong. But certainly there is an element of that. I think some of it is my nature. I've been feisty since I was a wee one.
No, come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yes. And I'm a lot like my mother. And I'm really proud of that in many ways. And also make some really intentional choices that are different from the ones that she made. And then I also think I talked earlier about, my dad passed away when I was really young. My grandfather was part of the residential school system. And so there was a couple of layers of disconnection from my culture. But when my kids were born, when I was in my very early 20s, my daughter was born, I went on a journey to figure out who we were and where we came from. My mom always did a really good job of talking about it and of trying to connect me with who I was as a Métis person. But I was raised just like most other people in our country without a lot of knowledge. And so when I was 20, I reconnected with my family from Fort Chipewyan. Many generations in Fort Chipewyan. We are the Fort Chip Frasers. And that was such a gift to go to a family reunion when I was probably, I don't know, early 20s, we'll say. And even though all the stories my mother had told me, I'm like, oh, wow, my relatives are speaking Cree and doing all these things that I've read about and heard about. And so in that moment, Elder Jumbo Fraser, we fell in love from the very first moment, and he took me under his wing. He made me a drum after our very first time together, again in my early 20s. And so that reconnection back and understanding, I always understood who I was as a Métis woman. I just did not understand how to make the connection between that and who I was. And for me, that allowed me to be grounded in a new way. It allowed me to understand myself in such a beautiful way, to be proud of who I am. And I think that reconnection, which is way over 30 years ago now, it was a big part. That happened just before kind of this, unlocking, or that even sitting in the, in the bookstore looking up at the self-help section. And I do believe that reconnection to my roots and to our family and to who I am as a Métis woman opened up in me what I needed to truly be and become and believe in who I am.
So at what time did you, after you had gone through this and you got your commercial license, where did you go from there? Were you working somewhere else? Did you go say, look, I'm flying now? Or how did that move on?
So I got I started my commercial license, my flight training, just shortly after 9/11. So there were no jobs. I did it anyways. That was one of the things, like, what are you even doing? And so I was able to get a job. And that, again, is part of my tenacity in saying, okay, what other things can I learn or do that will have me be more a better applicant than some of the other applicants. So I learned how to be a dispatcher. I learned how to do all kinds of things that would support that. I got my instructor rating. I taught only for just a short while because I was able to find a flying job, which was amazing. And then I went up north to fly for a small operator and gain some experience.
Yeah, and where was that?
I was based in Masset, in Terrace for most of the time, and in Smithers, which I love. I love Smithers.
Right.
I have so many questions, which we're going to get to. Being a female in the aviation career path, there's not even a moment, and this is just me because every child is different, that nor did any of my friends look up at the sky and go, I'm going to be a pilot. And when we were growing up, so
Yeah, there's a reason why it was called a cockpit.
well, I guess so. Yeah. I guess so. Funny. Wow, you're funny. Probably true is female pilots were, I just remember even when I was flying, even my 20s, and a woman came out from the cockpit, and I was like, holy, like, I was just stunned, and I just looked at her like, good for you. You know, I mean, that's incredible. And that's not an Indigenous woman, right? And whether you be Black or Indigenous or whatever culture you may be, just being a woman, period, behind that. But I can't imagine that there are very many females in the aviation sector. And I remember being on a panel with you, and you gave some statistics about this, and I'm really interested in hearing that. And then you deciding to go into becoming a pilot, and how were you received in respect of when you were looking for jobs? Like what's your experience been? So
So I'll start with some statistics. About 6% of commercial pilots are women. And it depends a little bit. Sometimes you'll see 12% because that's all pilot licenses, including commercial license or including private licenses. About 3% or 4% are airline pilots. And with aircraft maintenance engineers is even worse. So aircraft maintenance engineers, only 2.3% of AMEs in Canada are women. And less than 0.5% would be Black, Indigenous, or women of color, like all together.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is a very male-dominated field. And my experience, I've been really reflecting on my experience, because when I started, I would have told you that there was no problem. I would have told you there's no bias, there's no problem, it's fine, everything's great, I don't get treated any differently. And what I'm realizing now is that was a coping mechanism. You almost had to believe that to be able to persevere through. And you also couldn't make a fuss ever, right? I never talked about my children because I didn't want anybody to know I had children, because I was worried that people would make decisions based on my behalf, based on their bias about what jobs were suitable for me or not. And especially a single mom, nobody would have given me a job. And so I didn't talk about having kids. I did whatever was needed to fit in, to make sure that all the guys knew I wasn't going to make any trouble, which meant, swearing like a trucker and saying inappropriate things and making sure that everybody knew, okay, she's cool. And
are you a pilot too, Gina?
I was going to say, maybe I am a pilot.
I'd like to see you flying up there. That'd be pretty cool.
Just don't leave the speaker on or the anything.
But certainly there are lots of barriers and lots of challenges. There's lots of bias. There's lots of conscious bias, unconscious bias. And it is a very, very male-dominated field.
Wow. And then now tell us, leading up, so you've decided that you're going to become a pilot, single mom, you got a job. At what point did you say, you know what, I think I'm going to own my own airline? Because these are dreams that seem impossible even today, let alone when you decided to do it. It seems unattainable, even with all the resources that we can have and all the support. Like, tell us what was pinnacle to your decision that you wanted to move forward and be your own boss and take that risk.
Well, I think just like some of the stories I talked about earlier, it's like, you open one door for yourself, and then the next door is either opens easier or is a bigger door. And so I think it's the same. When I first started my own aerial survey company, and I started that with a partner at the time, both a life partner, and we worked in the business together. And so I started an aerial survey company called YWCA Aerial Survey, which I love the name. I love it because YWCA is a Cree word that means both sky and eye, which when you're doing aerial survey is super cool. And as that relationship came apart, selling that company became a necessity to disentangle. A lot of heartache all wrapped up in that, a lot of heartache. So I thought I was done with aviation. I thought it was time to hang up my wings. And, I started thinking about and looking at what else I would do next. And getting my wings, and by getting my wings, I mean getting my pilot's license, really truly gave me wings for everything else in my life. But I just, I was tired and I was heartbroken. And so I started, looking at the other things to do. But I was having a hard time letting go. I was having a hard time letting go of aviation. It had brought me so much richness and so much education and so much opportunity, so much freedom. And so I thought, okay, I know I'm having trouble letting go. So what are we going to do? Well, of course, we're going to have a letting go ceremony. So in my own mind and in my own self, I thought, okay, I'm going to just go into all the different pieces of aviation that were meaningful for me, and I'm going to remember, honor, and let go. So, okay, first solo, remember, honor, let go. Getting my commercial license, remember, honor, let go. My first job, remember, honor, let go. And that ceremony continued. And then I was like, oh, remember that time just before the Olympics, and you had this dream to start this airline that would connect travelers coming to the Olympics in Vancouver and Whistler and connect them into the rest of the world and connect them with Indigenous communities. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm not going to get to do that dream. So my letting go ceremony started into a start a new business ceremony. And I drove home that night. I named it. I incorporated it. I put up a website and I started a business plan. So it was a 10-year-old dream that I was actually trying to lay to rest, that showed me and revealed itself as the right time now.
And that was Iskwew.
And that is Iskwew Air.
Yeah.
What year was that?
So that would have been in 2016. When that actual incorporation happened. It takes a long time to get to where we are now.
Okay.
And where are you now?
Yeah, I want to know. So, what plane did you buy? What did you buy? Like, what? Give us an idea. The size, the job, your business.
Yeah, sure. So, it's just Iskwew Air is an airline, yes, but it's a very humble, very small. We have just little airplanes. The first airplane I bought is they're all Piper Navajos. The first one is, they all have names. My aircraft have names. There's 3 aircraft. There is Sweetgrass Warrior, Strawberry Moon, and Baby Bison are the aircraft. And so we fly between, we have scheduled service between Vancouver and Qualicum Beach. We do 6 legs a day on weekdays and 4 legs a day on weekends. And we do some cargo, and we do some charter work.
Is that now, or how did you start? I guess my question.
Just one airplane, but I mean, I'll tell you how we started. It takes a long time, like a couple of years. You got to find the money. It's a huge regulatory process with many different regulators, not just one. And, it takes a long time to get that operating certificate, that basically that piece of paper in your hand that says, okay, you can go. And we received that operating certificate on October 1st. The October just before the pandemic was declared. So we were just getting started as the pandemic changed our lives, really. And so we delayed the launch of scheduled service because we literally weren't permitted to fly at times, of course, during that period. So we delayed scheduled service and started out just with charters. We did some, which was beautiful. I'm so proud of that work because what do you do now, right? You're not allowed to fly. So we raised some money and we did a project to bring supplies into Indigenous communities, PPE, fruits, vegetables, security, toilets, all kinds of different things that communities needed in a really dire time. And that's what we're taught, right? Is how can I help? How can I support? How can I serve? How can I uplift others with what I know or with what I have?
I think that is such a commonality. Not what you're doing, but it's a common theme amongst Indigenous entrepreneurs, which is the reason why we started the Bears Lair, is because our experience with 99% of the entrepreneurs that we've met are not just, here's a pen, bought it for $2 and we're selling it for $4. How can we give back to community on whether it's a community, a regional, national, or global level? And that's exactly, I mean, for somebody that starts an airline, which is the sole purpose is transportation during an aviation shutdown for business.
In a startup. I knew starting an airline was going to be hard. I knew that going in, right? I knew it was going to be tough. I knew it was going to be hard. I mean, never before then could we imagine that there would be a global pandemic, a complete shutdown. So an airline startup in a global pandemic is like next level impossible. The fact that we survived through that is
and gave back while
amazing.
You gave back while you did it. And I think
I sure tried hard, Gina.
Oh, I know. And that's one of the stories I think that a lot of people, Teara Fraser is, the first Indigenous and all this rah-rah and behind the onion layers. And you and I always talk about this, and many of our circles of circles talk about behind the onion layers of the shiny onion you see at the front, as many onion layers of everything that we've been through. And when you put all the chips on the table, when you literally have all your poker chips and put it in, and then you
everything.
Announce it. And I always like to say, I mean, there is no option to fail.
None.
There's none. Zero. And I think what people don't understand, and that can be on a micro level of somebody that spends their last $50 on beading, on the supplies for beading, somebody that puts it all in for whether it's a food truck or a construction business, but buying a plane. And then in your risk mediation of your business plan, did you ever think, well, what if the whole world shuts down?
It wasn't a thing.
It's so
at
bizarre.
That time.
And then on top of that, for you to give back so much with the sanitizers and all of the needs and the masks and the things that elders needed, and bringing it into community during a really difficult time. And I think that deserves so much, so much hands up and praise for everything that you did. And on top of while you were going through everything that you were going through, which just shows the kind of integrity and person that you are. It's an incredible story.
Thank you.
And from there, from getting through a pandemic, and I know on a very smaller scale, but big to us at the time, when we decided to film a TV show during a pandemic. And then and then trying to get through that, and sponsors and people believing in what you're doing, and behind every successful person is a village of people that stand behind you. Who is your motivation? I know that your children are grown up. And you have a beautiful granddaughter.
I do.
Please tell us about her.
Oh my gosh. What a precious little human. Her name is YWCA. And YWCA is a Cree word that means to rise up. Some people ask me why my focus of language is on Cree, being a Métis woman. And many of the matriarchs in my Métis family line were Cree speaking. And so that is the language that feels like a way to honor those matriarchs. So YWCA is 3, and she is so precious and so beautiful. And, this is what it is all about. I'll tell you a story, a very short story. When she's learning to talk, and I'm teaching her airplane, airplane, airplane. So everywhere we go, airplane. And then I would touch on my ear to hear it first. So I would touch on my ear, and she would hear it, and then she would look for it. And she said to me, Pum Pum, because that's what she calls me. I'll tell you why in a second. Pum Pum, airplane, Pum Pum, airplane. It was Pum Pum's airplane.
Oh,
I looked up, and it was actually my airplane.
Oh my God.
And so, that's what this is all about. It's disrupting, even choosing the name for my airline. Marketing 101 will tell you, don't name something people can't say, and nobody can say it, and that's okay. It's a bit of a game. It's a bit of the conversation. Iskwew, but it's a Cree word that means woman. And for me right now, I've gone all the way from defeminizing myself in our industry and fitting in anywhere that I can to disrupting our industry. And I fly around an airplane called Woman Air with Cree words and syllabics on the side of it. And that is my way of disrupting our industry and showing YWCA that she belongs wherever she dreams to be.
And so, and I think I love that, right? And so, and what has the disruption been? Is it just people just not accepting it, or envy, or, what is it?
I mean, the disruption is on my part. The disruption is to say, you know what, this is, this belongs in our industry. Right. And it's hard to say, and you don't understand. Is it Métis or is it Cree? I'll tell you, I've faced more sexism and racism since starting this airline than cumulatively in my entire life. I have a lot of privilege and don't face the same kinds of racism as my cousins and brothers and sisters do. But it is wild for the response of some people, the audacity. Oh, the literal audacity of someone to name an airline Woman Air in an Indigenous language. And that's what disrupting is. Yeah, and I chose the name as an act of reclamation of womanhood, like a reclaiming womanhood, reclaiming matriarchal leadership, and the unique and beautiful ways in which we can lead from a heart-centered, human-centered place. And it's an act of reclamation of language.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, I do. And so did you find it was just the industry in general that was my question, was it competitors? Was it just that where people were like, wow, what is this woman doing? And I know you're doing zero emissions you're trying for, and these types of very forward thinking, and which we would think is just normal, right?
In our world,
yeah.
We, give back. There's always social impact. There's always profit with purpose in the world that we live in. Yeah. But not necessarily the world that we don't live in.
Yeah. I guess what comes to mind when you ask me that question, Dean, is I'm spending less and less time thinking about or caring what other people are thinking about or caring about.
Absolutely.
And for me, I'm just trying to do the best that I can in my world.
I want to talk about our last question, which is going to be what's passionate to you and your social impact and what you're a part of, because I know Indigenous youth, we teach camps all over Canada, and we're teaching life skills, and we're talking eye contact and social confidence and career paths and entrepreneurism. But there is a possibility where there wasn't a long time ago for youth to be involved in aviation right now. And I know that you have a program that's really close to your heart, and maybe you could tell that story, a story that you said what flying means to me, because, and then maybe we could, if it's on YouTube, we could get people to watch it to see the power that that holds.
Yeah, I really am passionate about inspiring Indigenous youth to discover the wonder of flight. And I mean, for me, it has been, again, getting my wings has given me wings for everything else in my life. And so to inspire young people to reach out and explore aviation, to know it's there, we have a program called Give Them Wings. So givethemwings.ca. And yes, there's a video where we had an event. Part of Give Them Wings is bringing young people, their families, their elders to the airport environment to check out airplanes, to check out a simulator, to go on a discovery flight. And at the first one of these events that we had, they had their day experiencing aviation. And in the closing ceremony, on the big whiteboard, I wrote "Flying is," and then a big line, and then a period at the end of the sentence. And I gave each of the youth a Post-it note and said, "Finish the sentence. Flying is." And the video on our website is me reading what the young people said about what flying is. And in the video, when you watch it, when I say flying is triumph, I get choked up every time, because that was my word, triumph.
Wow.
Givethemwings.ca.
And it's true.
Amazing. And if people want to get a hold of you, there's a couple things. Number one, you have Iskwew Air.
Yes.
And people can find you at your website.
Iskwew.ca.
Right. But on another level, we're here to support each other. We're here to uplift each other, but we're also here to inspire people. Inspirational speaking is something that you haven't done a lot of lately. I know that you've spent a lot of time with your family and, I mean, working on your business, but going out and having you on a panel, having you as a keynote speaker to talk to organizations, to inspire, it doesn't matter what organization you are part of, is something that I think that people should take advantage of in reaching out to you, because I've heard you speak, I've heard you be on panels, you're an incredible inspiration, and everything that you're doing for humanity and society and your story of adversity is something that should be heard, and success on top of all of this is just something that should be heard. So if anybody wants to get a hold of Teara Fraser,
yes.
How do they get a hold of you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. And that is definitely my my preferred social platform, especially these days. And I mean, I'm fairly easy to find, and happy for folks to reach out.
And I just want to end with that visual of how full circle that would come, that your granddaughter said pom-pom airplane and it was your plane.
And no, it was so beautiful, because I didn't know. I was just like, listen. And then I was looking up with her, and pom-pom. So she calls me pom-pom because she couldn't say kukum when she was little. So it became pom-pom. And it's so endearing, and now she won't call me anything else. So it's pom-pom from here on in. And how beautiful for that little girl that's 3 years old to look up, pom-pom airplane, and for me to be able to say that is actually pom-pom's airplane. And there's some gorgeous pictures of her in the airplane, and that's why we do everything, right? I want to do what I can in my little corner, tiny corner of the world, to pave the way and make it easier for those that are coming.
Amazing.
Thank you so much, beautiful friend.
You're welcome, my beautiful friend.
Yes, and congratulations on everything.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Lair. Please follow us, download this episode, and follow us on social media on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and TikTok.